Hi parents, it's Miss Victoria. So if you're looking for the video to how to make the feelings jar with your child, it's down below in the description. I have a link there. And it's a video specifically made for you and your child to make the feelings jar together. There's certain things that I would recommend a parent is necessary for. But the idea is that the child gets to make the feelings jar and that they get to pick the content and that they establish some sort of emotional connection with this object. And the sake of this video is to give you some more insight and to explain some of the science and the research that goes behind the feelings jar. So when I'm not at WBs with your kids, I'm usually at the New School for Social Research doing social research into childhood development and specifically creative development within childhood. So one of the things that I use a lot in research and that I've seen used a lot with teachers and psychologists and parents is this thing called the feelings jar. And it has a ton of different names. It's called a glitter jar, feelings globe, emotion globe. If you search it up, you can find a ton of different blogs and instructions on how to make one. And the idea is that you tailor it to whatever needs or whatever personality that your child has. So you can change the colors, you can change the content, the type of jar. The idea is just to make something similar where all of the content can float to the bottom so that it can be used as a tool for your child for emotional development, to have some sort of connection with mindfulness at such a young age, and to also teach them how to concentrate. So I know that right now, during these hard times, even though your child might not totally understand what's going on, it could also be very emotionally taxing for your children, having to stay inside, not see their friends and family, and also just sometimes the energy in the household being stuck inside can be a little bit hard on your kid. So if your child is experiencing a lot of hardships, emotional things, that's totally normal, it's totally fine. The same way that we also experience emotional hardships during tough times where uncertainty happens, your child is experiencing something very similar, and that's totally okay. And I'm hoping that with this video, I can explain some ways in which the feelings jar can help your child during this time, and also to explain and kind of understand a bit more about your child's emotional development stage at the time. So I'm going to show you some notes that I've made just to explain a bit more about what's going on right now for your child and also with this feelings jar. Okay. So what is a feelings or an emotion jar? It's a way to kind of introduce mindfulness to your children at such a young age. Mindfulness is something so abstract, but I'm hoping that through this kind of lesson for your kid, it can be something a lot more accessible. So this is kind of what they look like. They can take any way, shape, or form that is best for you. I know that it's kind of hard to find and buy materials right now, so you can get creative, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out about how to make one. So what is a feelings or an emotions jar? As I was saying, it's essentially just a jar with glitter or a bunch of stuff, and it's used as a tool for helping your child understand their feelings. So sometimes when our children get really upset or angry or frustrated, they bottle up all their feelings, and inside they feel frustrated. They don't know how to express their emotions. They don't know how to talk about how they're feeling. Sometimes they lash out and they do things or say things that can be hurtful to themselves or others. So using a feelings jar is a great way to kind of help them understand their feelings. It's a visual aid to kind of bring the internal into the external. So it helps them visualize and see firsthand and also hold in their hands something that kind of represents what it is that's going on inside. So if your kid is like going crazy, really upset, and on the inside, they just have so many feelings that they can't do anything about it, and they might be having a temper tantrum, a feelings jar is a great way to kind of explain that to them. It's also a multisensory tool. It's visual, it's tactile. If you put something like rice or beads in it, it can even be auditory. So it stimulates all the senses, which is really imperative for childhood development. And it's a great thing to have a personal relationship with an object that represents or can be an aid for emotional development. So right now, your child probably has a very weird relationship with feelings because it's so abstract and they're young, and they probably don't know how to go through and kind of self-regulate their feelings, and that's totally normal. They're young, they can't really do that yet. So feelings jar is a great way to kind of start that developmental process with them, which is definitely going to take some time, and it's going to grow and change throughout their development, and that's totally okay. So the materials that you need, and I explained this again in the video below, and the video below is made for you and your child to make it together using child-friendly language for them. The idea is to use a transparent container. Avoid anything that would break. Your kids are still small and accidents happen, so if this drops, mine will definitely go all over the floor and I'll have glitter for years on the floor, and that's not something you want. So using a plastic jar is usually better, and something that's completely sealed. You also want something that can fit comfortably in their hands. They still have small hands, so something that can fit nice and snug in their hands so that they can hold it and that they can have a more intimate relationship with an object that is made for them. It's made for their size, for their understanding, for their visual and emotional intelligence is something really crucial for this. So if their jar is super big and it's heavy and they can't hold it, or if it's too small and it just kind of gets lost when they hold it, it's best to use something that's adequate for their size, something that they can hold, but that they can also see when they hold. And that's just very comfortable for them. The liquid content, I use water and glycerin, vegetable glycerin. You can also use clear Elmer's glue, and that's also explained in the other video. And then in terms of stuff, for the content, you want to be using the most basic thing that we use is glitter for these things, because glitter does take a while to settle. But you can also use small objects like Legos or rice, beans, confetti, beads, anything that you have at home. And if you do use something more heavy, such as Legos or rice or beans or small objects, I definitely recommend using more of the glycerin or oil or the transparent glue. So that way when the objects do fall, they fall a lot slower. So it's definitely useful for that. Also, you want to make sure that it's objects that don't float. So this is a great opportunity to explore buoyancy with your children. You can just use another little container and test out if things float or not. And then you can also use food coloring. But the key thing with this object is to make sure that your child makes it. Don't make it for them and then give it to them. If you can, have them do as much as possible that is within reason when making the feelings jar. The more they make it, the more they experience it, the more connection they're going to have to it. So if they know from the beginning that they're making this object for themselves, and not using it as an experiment or a game or a toy, but a feelings tool, they're going to experience a relationship with the object that's a lot more beneficial to the use of it. So a suggestion, this could probably be if your child has a bit more understanding of their different feelings. You can use 3 different colors to represent thoughts, feelings, and behavioral responses. So I simply just use blue and some white glitter and whatever stuff I could find at WB's. And if you have these things around, definitely do it. If not, it's totally okay. But one way that I've done this with children that are a little older and more emotionally developed is having 3 different colors. So usually blue, red, yellow, or any 3 colors that the child really likes. And I attach each color to thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So as the content in the jar slowly starts to settle, we talk about how the blue is the thoughts. And so your thoughts are being calmed down and they're starting to settle down and they're not so jumbled up in your head like you are when you're really angry and frustrated. Your feelings also start to calm down and settle down. And so do your behavioral responses. So when your child feels really upset or frustrated, they usually try to express that and project those emotions either by doing something or saying something. And sometimes those expressions of emotions can be hurtful to themselves or others. So understanding that a behavior and an expression of their feelings can also be shaking the jar. This is a perfectly acceptable and really good way for them to release their energy. If it's obviously not in a glass jar, if it's plastic, they can shake it around, they can toss it around, they can take their anger out on the jar. And they know that this is not something that can hurt themselves or anyone else if used in the correct way. So the idea is that once they shake it, everything's all shaken up, it's all crazy on the inside, it looks just like what they're feeling. And as time passes, they could either sing a song, or they can count, or they can just talk with a grown-up. As all the content slowly starts to fall to the bottom, they are going to also be having their thoughts and feelings and behavioral responses also kind of settle down and fall to the bottom. So this is also just a way to visualize what it means to have a space to create silence when you're angry, a space to kind of be mindful of your feelings. And the idea is that feelings are totally natural and they're okay. This is a tool that is used to understand emotions, not to get rid of them. It's the most natural thing for your child to feel angry, frustrated, sad, especially during these hard times. So a feelings jar is a way to understand feelings, not take them away. So a way to show this to your child is have your child walk around with the feelings jar in their hands, and they're going to notice that in no way possible, unless the feelings jar is planted on the ground or on a table, you're always going to get some movement inside of the jar. So you're always going to have some sort of feelings as you go through life, and feelings are totally okay. But the thing that we need to remember is how to deal with them and how to go about them. So the way that this works is that right now, your children are starting to develop this thing called theory of mind. So theory of mind is something that we mainly believe it starts to develop around 4 and 5. You'll start to see it more around ages 4 and 5. But recent research definitely shows that around age 3, children do start to have some sort of understanding of emotions and response to their own emotions and others' emotions in a more conscious way. So right now, since your children are just starting to understand how their own feelings work and how feelings work in general, as well as in other people, as they develop this thing called the theory of mind, it's perfect to introduce something like the feelings jar or any other device or tool to help them understand that. So theory of mind is basically a way for your child to understand what it means to see the world in a different perspective. So as the basic explanation to theory of mind is, if I'm here sitting with a child and another parent, if, let's say, I have the jar, I have my feelings jar, right? We all see the feelings jar, myself, the child, and the other parent sees the feelings jar. And then the other parent leaves to go to the bathroom. And while that parent is in the bathroom, I and the child put the glass jar behind the computer. So I know where the jar is and the child knows where the jar is, but the other parent is in the bathroom, so they don't know where the jar is. And so the other parent comes back, and when someone asks the child, where do you think parent A thinks that the jar is? The child is going to respond that they know that the jar is behind the computer. But what they don't realize is that parent A doesn't see things from their perspective. They were in the bathroom. They didn't see us put the jar behind the computer. They are completely oblivious to what just happened. But the child doesn't understand that. They can't see the world through other people's eyes yet. And so this is a really crucial thing in emotional development. They can't see that when they're angry and they do something to you, that you can feel upset as well. So they don't understand how to relate to people and feel empathy and sympathy. And it's totally normal. They're going to develop that, and the feelings jar is a way to help them develop that. So like you see here, like when you're talking with your child on the phone and they say, look at this, they don't understand that you can't see that because you're not physically there. And so around the age of 4 or 5, they'll start developing those areas of the brain in the prefrontal cortex where they can start to understand that. And a really great researcher who has done a lot of research around this is Dr. Richard Davidson. He's from the University of Wisconsin, and he has done a lot of research with children around theory of mind, and a lot of research around mindfulness with children. And so here in the link, which I can share this, I'll be sharing this presentation below. You can click on the link, and the link shows how theory of mind works with children. Dr. Richard Davidson was also part of a documentary called Free the Mind, and the feelings jar is used in that documentary. I believe it's on Amazon Prime. So I recommend watching that if you want to learn more about the feelings jar and just see it in action in like a more research setting. I think they do it as well with like either 4 or 5-year-olds, and they do a little case study on a child. The case study is focused on a child with ADHD. But one thing I want to make clear is that feelings jars and anything that is used to help your child emotionally develop, it's not just for a child that has some sort of developmental problem or is struggling in any sort of way. Feelings jars are used with all sorts of children in all ages. I've used it with teenagers as well, and they are a bit more hesitant to be open to it, but it's definitely a useful tool. And it also just helps boost multisensory learning. It helps them understand visualizing abstract concepts. Feelings aren't something we can touch, smell, or see. So talking about feelings, talking about the difference between anger and sadness and frustration is something that your child will slowly start to develop more of an understanding of. And this can be a great tool to understand how to deal with those feelings. So the uses of a feelings jar. Mindfulness is definitely something that can be explained to children through the feelings jar. Something that I really admire from Miss Tasha, who works with the Sprouts, is that she cultivates this thing called silence, making silence in the classroom, where all the children sit down and they play the silence game, and they don't move, they don't say anything, and they just keep the peace or keep the silence. And that's a way to explain mindfulness to children in a way where they can understand it. They can do it in a cohesive setting with their peers and also with their teachers. So you can definitely use that with your children at home. You can make silence with your child by just sitting down in a comfortable position and being quiet for a couple minutes together, not moving, not saying anything, just being very quiet and peaceful with them. And when you're using your feelings jar, you can also make silence. So after you shake it up, you can just watch silently, quietly, very peacefully as all of the content inside of your jar falls to the bottom. And while you're doing that, you can encourage deep breathing, meditation, or some sort of reflection with your child, depending on what they're comfortable with and what they can do. Another thing to understand is that their body behaviors and their body reactions are probably not going to go away. It's very normal for a child to get heated, to want to move around, to want to do something or say something or express their emotions in some sort of physical way when they are feeling very frustrated or upset or whatever it might be. It can also be used to explain positive feelings. So your child might also get really, really excited. We see this in the kids when we're about to go outside or we're about to do a really fun experiment or project. They might get super, super excited, and sometimes they might also start bouncing off the walls and being very loud. So positive feelings also need some sort of meditation around them too. So understanding that feelings on both sides of the spectrum, very negative and very positive feelings, can elicit behavioral and bodily responses, and that's okay. But what the feelings jar is meant to do is to help your child regulate that and understand that running around the house 10 million times and screaming at the top of their lungs might not be the best way to understand what's going on when they feel angry or sad or really excited. But looking at their jar and saying, look, wow, I feel just like the jar. Everything's going around in circles and it looks like a tornado and it's going crazy in there. And I feel like I'm going crazy in here too. But that's okay, because if I leave the jar down and I sit with my jar and I breathe and I take some time and I count to 10 or I sing a song, I can also help myself calm down. And this is a really important step in helping your child know that they can feel okay by themselves. Our children are still at an age where they need a grown-up or some sort of parent or caretaker to help them understand their feelings, and that's totally okay. I still sometimes go to my parents when I need some sort of emotional help, and it's totally normal. It's always going to be like that. But it's important for your child to develop some sort of acknowledgement that they can also self-regulate and self-heal. So knowing that they can grab their jar and they can shake it and look at it and create silence and come back to a more peaceful state on their own is really, really important. And that can totally be developed with this kind of object. And it's going to take some time. It's going to take practice. It's going to take a grown-up to explain it to them, but it can happen. So definitely acknowledging that your child has the ability to self-regulate their feelings is something that can come out of this. So these are just some other examples. Here's done with Legos. I know a ton of our kids love Legos with different things. So make sure that, you tailor your feelings jar to whatever is best for your child, whatever they connect with, whatever colors they like, and introduce it in a very nice and calming way. Make sure that while you're making it, it's something very meditative, something that your child connects with. And just have it around, take it with you to the park, take it with you to the grocery store, wherever you are. If it's small enough and if it's something you can just put in your bag and take with you, when they do feel upset or angry, they can just take it out and shake it, and just in their little corner of the world, just observe and watch their feelings calm down as they can kind of start feeling their own feelings calm down within themselves. So I hope this was helpful, parents. I fully that this little object can be of use for you. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I really think that this is a great object. I've done a lot of research around different ways to do emotional healing with children in a creative way, and this is definitely one of my favorite ones. So I hope you enjoyed the video and found it helpful.